This house no longer has room for failures. Loretta's cold declaration cut through me like shards of glass. I stood frozen in the hallway of the suburban home I had shared with Finn for 15 years, my sanctuary now utterly defiled. Loretta loomed before me, gray eyes harsh with condemnation. What are you talking about? I choked out, perspiration prickling my skin despite the chill in the air. Finn stepped out from behind his mother, features taut. Alara, there's no easy way to say this. I have another family. The room tilted violently. I clutched the banister, fighting the waves of nausea crashing through me. You have a what? I gasped out in disbelief. Loretta snorted derisively. Did you truly believe my son would spend his life shackled to a barren wife? The words lacerated my soul, unearthing every inadequacy I had grappled with over our childless years of marriage. Finn averted his gaze, unable to meet my eyes. It's true, he said tonelessly. I have a mistress, Marissa, and a daughter with her. Jenna, she's 13 now. 13 years. More than a decade of deception, of living a lie beside me while building a life with another woman behind my back. I fought to stay upright as my world imploded around me. Why? My voice was a strangled whisper. Why would you do this to me? To us? We wanted a child, Finn replied hollowly. And you couldn't give me that. Before I could formulate a response, Loretta thrust a sheaf of papers into my hands. These are the divorce papers. Sign them and remove yourself from our lives. You were never more than a disappointment. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks, blurring the small print on the documents condemning my marriage to ashes. Images flashed through my mind. Finn whispering his love as we exchanged vows, the premature loss of our unborn child that haunted us both, the endless bottles of fertility treatments we endured with dimming hope. All a twisted facade orchestrated by the man I had loved and trusted above all others. Heaving breaths shuddered through me. Loretta's vicious smirk taunted me as she ran an approving hand over Finn's slumped shoulders. You should have known better than to deny my son his legacy, she sneered. Suddenly, everything crystallized with brutal clarity. Not only had Finn betrayed me by creating a secret family, but his ruthless mother had supported and enabled his deception all along. The life I thought I had, the future I envisioned with Finn, it had all been a sham. Bitter fury overtook my anguish, scorching through my veins with searing heat. Slowly I straightened and met their stares with incendiary defiance. This pain would be a crucible to forge me anew, a whetstone to hone my resolve into fine-edged steel. You're right, Loretta, I said, voice dripping with venom. I won't be a failure any longer. With deliberate movements, I tore the divorce papers into confetti and met Finn's stunned gaze. I'll sign those papers, but only after ensuring you face the consequences of your choices. This is far from over. Leaving the tattered remnants fluttering to the floor, I turned and walked out of that mausoleum of shattered dreams, reborn with a single-minded purpose to make Finn Townsend pay for his betrayal. I threw the last of my belongings into the battered duffel bag and zipped it shut with shaking hands. The house, Finn's house, no longer felt like a home, just an empty shell haunted by years of lies. You ready, sis? I turned to see Kyle watching me with worried eyes. My little brother and his wife Sophie had arrived like knights in a fairy tale after I had called, voice cracking with despair, and begged for refuge. Yeah, let's get out of here, I replied, hefting the bag over my shoulder. One last glance around the room that used to be our sanctuary, now stripped of all meaning. Then I brushed past Kyle and descended the stairs, each step fueling the incandescent rage simmering within me. Finn stood in the hallway, Loretta hovering like a noxious storm cloud at his side. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, Loretta's eyes glittered with malicious triumph. Running away so soon? She clucked her tongue in mock sympathy. I expected better from you, Alara, dear. White-hot hatred flared through me. I'm done playing your games, Loretta. This path only leads to destruction for you and your bastard son. Such venom, Loretta sneered. Careful, or you'll lose the last shred of sympathy from decent people. Kyle stepped forward, glaring at Loretta. That's enough out of you, Loretta. Don't forget who enabled this mess in the first place. He turned to Finn. I never thought you'd stoop this low, man. Was it worth throwing away 15 years of marriage? An inscrutable mask slid over Finn's face as his gaze met mine. Things change. People change. Sure they do, I said bitterly. Clearly you were never the man I thought I married. For an instant, a spasm of emotion flickered in his eyes before the impassive facade returned. Take care of yourself, Alara. Don't worry, I said with biting coldness. I'll be just fine once I'm through with you. Kyle ushered me out of that mausoleum, and we loaded my meager belongings into his car. As we pulled away from the house that was once my entire world, I watched it dwindle in the side mirror. I know you're hurting right now, Kyle said quietly, but you're not alone in this, okay? Sophie and we're here for you every step of the way. Nestled in the safety of my brother's presence, the fury that had sustained me began to ebb. A hollow ache replaced it, the crevasse in my soul left by Finn's betrayal. How could he do this to me? The tremulous question slipped out, unbidden. After everything we went through together, all the struggles and hardship, how could he destroy it all for another family? Kyle reached over and squeezed my hand. I don't have any justification for what he did, Alara. It was an unforgivable violation of your trust and love. Tears blurred my vision, but I blinked them away fiercely. I can't let him get away with this, Kyle. He needs to face consequences, him and Loretta both. My brother nodded grimly. We'll figure it out together, one step at a time. But know that whatever you decide, I've got your back. A plan began taking tenuous shape in my mind, a path toward vengeance and reclaiming my life from the ashes of betrayal. Finn and his wretched mother believed they could crush me underfoot, but they had underestimated the man I used to love. I would show them the soul-incinerating fury of a woman scorned, ensure they understood the gravity of the devastation they had unleashed upon my life. Alara Townsend was reborn, and she would burn their world to ashes. The apartment was modest but clean, a far cry from the house I had shared with Finn. Yet it felt like a sanctuary, a place to start anew after my life had been razed by his deception. I settled onto the couch, booting up my laptop. If I was going to bring down Finn and his twisted web of lies, I needed information. Intel on his mistress Marissa, their daughter Jenna, and any financial entanglements between them. With a few keystrokes, I began constructing an invisible trail of cyber breadcrumbs. Social media profiles, public records databases, even the darkest corners of the internet, nowhere would be off-limits in my quest for the truth about Finn's double life. The faintest chime from my phone made me glance over. A text from Kyle. Don't do anything crazy, sis. Remember, I've got your back, no matter what. I smiled grimly and typed back a reply. Don't worry, I'm just doing some research for now, but Finn's going to regret ever crossing me. It was slow going at first, but gradually the fragmented data points coalesced into a clearer picture of the depths of Finn's deceit. Marissa Vale, a corporate lawyer at a prestigious firm. Their daughter Jenna, a bright if shy teenager developing a passion for music and art. And at the center, Finn himself, spinning an incomprehensibly complex web of lies, financial and emotional betrayals to maintain his double life. Bank accounts, mortgages, even property investments, all meticulously partitioned between his two families with Icos-level precision. As I continued digging, flashes of white-hot fury lanced through me at the sheer calculated audacity of what Finn had engineered. How long had he been planning this sickening neo-polygamist charade? The level of sustained deception turned my stomach. A soft knock at the door made me start. I closed the laptop and crossed the room, peering through the peephole. Kyle stood outside with Sophie, holding up a plastic bag from the local Thai place. I opened the door and managed a thin smile. Hey guys, come on in. Kyle's eyes narrowed as he entered, sweeping his gaze over the dimly lit apartment and open laptop. You doing okay in here? Getting some rest at least? I'm fine, I lied smoothly. Just doing some research to understand the full scope of what Finn's pulled off. Sophie shot me a sympathetic look as she embraced me. Don't lose yourself in obsessing over the details, Alara. That's a dark path you don't want to go down. I know what I'm doing, I said, more harshly than intended. I softened my tone. Really, I appreciate you two being here for me. It means everything. Over pad thai and kung pao chicken, we reminisced about happier times. Childhood memories before the Townsend family stain of cruelty and deceit had infected our lives. Kyle and Sophie's caring smiles and gentle humor provided a balm to my fractured soul. Yet every time the laughter faded, images of Finn's betrayal reasserted themselves. tangling myself in his arms while he held another woman's child, pledging vows of forever while looking into Marissa's eyes. The dichotomy, the audacity of his actions, fanned the simmering flames of rage within me. As Kyle and Sophie finally readied to leave hours later, my brother drew me into a tight hug. Just be careful, Alara. Don't do anything that could threaten the moral high ground. I met his gaze steadily. I'll watch my step, I promise. But one way or another, Finn's going to answer for the lives he's destroyed. When they departed, I returned to my laptop and the stockpile of data, financial records, personal details, and incriminating evidence of Finn's perfidious double life. A plan began to take tenuous shape, a merciless roadmap of manipulation and retribution. Finn thought he could erase 15 years of marriage, our dreams and struggles, by discarding me for his mistress. He was about to learn the catastrophic consequences of that choice. Let the games begin. Over the following weeks, I diligently rebuilt my life from the ashes of Finn's betrayal. Using the skills and experience from my former marketing career, I landed a position at a boutique branding agency downtown. My new colleagues were a quirky bunch: Julia, the eccentric creative director; Ian, the soft-spoken graphic wizard; Danny, the fiercely blunt copywriter. At first, their raucous energy and behind-the-scenes banter felt jarring after the sterile quiet of my life with Finn. But gradually, I acclimated to their vibrant dynamics, and as the days passed, their caring warmth and dark senses of humor helped me reclaim parts of myself that Finn's deception had hollowed out. Earth to Alara! Julia's voice dragged me from my thoughts. The team was gathered in the conference room, brainstorming campaign concepts for a new sustainable clothing client. Sorry, I zoned out for a second there, I said, refocusing on the notes scrawled across the whiteboard. What were you saying about their social platforms? Basically, their Instagram game is on point, but their Facebook presence is non-existent, Ian said, pushing his thick-rimmed glasses up his nose. We need a solid cross-channel strategy to maximize visibility and conversions. Danny snorted. Let me put that in plain English. More likes equals more money. She flashed me a conspiratorial grin, and for the first time in ages, I felt a laugh bubbling up from deep inside. These people didn't know the first thing about my tumultuous personal life, but their raucous energy sparked life into my battered soul nonetheless. The brainstorming session flew by in a creative blur of ideas, quips, and Julia's terrible impressions of famous CEOs. As we broke for the evening gathering our things, Danny fell into step beside me. Hey, you hold that up, okay? She asked, keeping her voice low. Her brown eyes reflected a surprising tenderness beneath the prickly exterior. You've seemed a little distant lately. I almost deflected with a casual brush-off, my default persona from years with Finn. But something about Danny's blunt sincerity gave me pause. Not gonna lie, it's been rough, I admitted. My ex-husband pulled the rug out from under me in a pretty spectacular way. Danny's eyes widened and then narrowed to furious slits. That prick cheated on you? That's an understatement. I took a deep breath. Finn had an entire second family, a mistress and their teenage daughter. He'd been leading this insane double life for over a decade while married to me. For once, the blunt copywriter seemed at a loss for words. She shook her head in disbelief. I'm so sorry, E. That's just... No one deserves to go through that level of mindfuckery. I raised an eyebrow at her unexpected vitriol, and she shrugged unapologetically. What? I call it like I see it. This asshole husband of yours sounds like a top-tier garbage human. A startled laugh escaped my lips as we exited the agency into the cool evening air. You're not wrong about that, Danny. She stopped and fixed me with an intense stare. Listen, I know it's not my place to pry, but if you ever need to vent or even prank the hell out of that douche canoe ex, you come find me. We've got your back, okay? I searched her fiercely loyal expression and felt something loosen inside me. Finn's betrayal, while still an open wound, no longer calcified me in bitterness and rage. Thanks, Danny, I said softly. I might just take you up on that. As she strode off into the night with a negligent wave, I turned and began making my way home, resolving to double my efforts in dismantling Finn's world and bearing his lies to those he'd deceived. After all, I mused grimly, I now had allies helping pave the road to his destruction. The coffee shop's aroma of freshly brewed beverages and baked goods provided a cozy ambiance as I nursed my latte and surveyed my iPad screen. Despite the warmth surrounding me, an icy determination flooded my veins. After weeks of carefully constructing my stratagem, the time had arrived to bring Finn's house of lies crumbling down upon him. I had assembled a meticulous portfolio documenting every illicit dollar funneled into his duplicitous double life. Once I initialized the sequence, this trove of incriminating evidence would begin proliferating across the darker corners of the internet, seeding doubt and suspicion among Finn's colleagues, clients, and companies he courted. My fingers hesitated fractionally over the keyboard. Did I possess the ruthless resolve to utterly dissolve the man I had once pledged eternal devotion to? Images flashed through my mind. Finn's impassive stare as he revealed his treachery, Loretta's cruel sneers berating me as a failure unfit for her son. The memories strengthened my resolve into an adamantine edge. With a few deft keystrokes, I unleashed the digital onslaught. Uploading the portfolio to an anonymous server, I deployed an intricate web of bots and scrapers to disperse the files across every buried chat room and darknet enclave Finn's associates and investors frequented. Like a virus, the data would spread, calcifying into suspicion, doubt, and ultimate public disgrace. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from Kyle. "You still okay over there?" I typed back a brief reply. "Just made my next move against Finn. Get ready for fireworks." It didn't take long for the conflagration to spark. Within days, the data had disseminated through Finn's professional circles like wildfire, lurid revelations of embezzled funds, insider trading, money laundered to support his tangled web of infidelities. One evening, Danny bounded into the break room at the agency, eyes glittering with mischief. "You're not going to believe this," she crowed to the gathered team. "My buddy Brett is interning at one of the investment banks doing due diligence on Townsend Capital's latest merger deal." I felt my pulse spike at Finn's company name, but remained impassive as she continued. "Apparently there's some pretty wild chatter going around about the CEO, Finn Townsend himself. Rumors of him enriching himself at the expense of investors, using shell companies and offshore accounts to hide assets." She shook her head in disbelief. "Can you imagine if it's true? The deal would be tanked for sure." Ian let out a low whistle. "Sounds like the guy could be in deep trouble if there's proof behind those allegations." Julia hummed contemplatively. "I've worked with Townsend Capital in the past. Finn always gave off icky privileged frat bro vibes. I could totally see him getting up to shady shit." They lapsed into spirited discussion, sifting through the sordid rumors now staining Finn's once pristine reputation. I joined in half-heartedly, maintaining an impassive mask despite the pounding of my heart. The seeds of destruction had germinated precisely as intended. Barely 2 weeks later, ominous rumblings began emerging on financial newswires about issues at Townsend Capital, delayed audits, revolving executive doors, and most damningly, an SEC insider trading investigation probing all the way up to the CEO. One evening after work, Danny cornered me as I packed up my things to leave. "Hey, you've been awfully blasé about all this Townsend Capital scandal stuff lately." She eyed me appraisingly over the rims of her stylish glasses. "This doesn't have anything to do with that douche canoe ex of yours, does it?" I met her probing gaze steadily. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Danny's full lips curved in a knowing smirk. Sure. Well, listen up, Alara. I get the impulse to avenge an epic betrayal like that. But don't go burning yourself in the process, you feel me?" A faint smile played across my lips. "Don't worry, I can handle the heat." As I strode out into the cool evening, Finn's immaculate world was already unraveling in the grip of the secrets and lies I had so insidiously sown. The city street lamps flickered to life one by one, mirroring the path of destruction advancing with each passing day. Let him stew in the tangled creation of his own making, I thought with grim satisfaction. The true devastation was still to come. The exhilarating rush of seeing my intricate plans against Finn begin to bear fruit was swiftly doused by an icy trickle of trepidation. As his professional world crumbled, would the man I once loved seek retribution of his own? My fingers tightened around the coffee mug as I watched the financial news recap on the TV, mounted above the diner's counter. Shares of Townsend Capital plunging over 25% today amid the SEC's insider trading probe of CEO Finn Townsend. Sources indicate investigators are focusing on Townsend's use of offshore accounts and shell companies to conceal misappropriation of assets for personal enrichment. The tinny voice of the announcer receded into the diner's ambient clatter. I barely registered the sound of the bell jangling as the door swung open behind me. Well, if it isn't the orchestrator of my downfall. My blood turned to ice in my veins. I slowly pivoted on the stool to face Finn where he stood, shoulders slumped in his rumpled suit like a man carrying the weight of the world. Up close, his face was sallow and haunted, eyes sunken above days-old stubble. The confident alpha male aura he once projected was nowhere to be seen. "Fancy meeting you here," I said coolly, struggling to maintain my composure. "I take it things aren't going well at the office?" Finn's jaw tightened and he opened his mouth, no doubt to hurl patently false denials and bravado. But then his eyes caught the flickering financial broadcast over my shoulder, and his blustering momentum faltered. With a broken sigh, he sank into the diner seat opposite me. "You got me, Alara. You really got me good." I arched an eyebrow. "I'm sure I have no idea what you're babbling about. Maybe you should be more concerned with the mess of your own creation?" A harsh, bitter laugh escaped his lips. "Oh, I think we both know exactly what I'm referring to." He leaned across the countertop, and I caught a whiff of stale whiskey and desperation on his breath. "Those anonymous file drops, stirring up all the damning evidence about my finances and infidelity? That was all you, wasn't it?" I held his gaze steadily. "You seem to be letting your imagination run wild, Finn. Though I can't say I'm surprised, considering the tangled web of lies you've been spinning." Anger flashed across his features, and for an instant I saw a glimpse of the imperious man I thought I knew, the one who had so systematically deceived me. Finn opened his mouth as if to unleash a blistering retort, but seemed to think better of it. Instead, his expression crumpled into a mask of bone-deep wariness and resignation. "I don't know why I'm even objecting at this point. You're absolutely right. I brought this whole firestorm upon myself with my reprehensible actions and betrayal of your trust." He dragged a hand down his face, the motion somehow making his eyes look decades older. "The life I created with Marissa and Jenna, the way I treated you so abominably, there's no justification or excuse for it." His voice dropped to a hoarse rasp. "I've lost everything, haven't I?" I couldn't stop myself. A derisive snort of laughter burst from my lips. "Did you actually expect any other outcome after the Machiavellian hell you perpetrated against me?" Finn flinched, absorbing the impact of my biting scorn like a body blow. We lapsed into silence, the weight of his destruction yawning between us like a chasm. After an interminable stretch, Finn finally spoke in a toneless murmur. "I don't know what I was thinking. I had it all, career, family, you, and I torched it with my own reprehensible greed. There's no way to atone for that level of devastation, is there?" I stared at him for a long moment, at the ruins of the man whose betrayal had shaken my world to its core. Part of me felt a perverse sense of vindication at his utter abasement, but another part couldn't help but feel a glimmer of pity for the pathetic, half-broken figure hunched across the diner counter. "You're right, Finn," I said flatly. "There is no atonement here, not for the lives you destroyed, with your duplicity and selfish ego." With that, I rose from my seat and turned away, leaving him amid the smoldering ashes of the life he had so meticulously constructed. As I exited onto the bustling city street, a strange sense of lightness buoyed my spirit. Finn's downfall was complete, but my own rebirth, my renewal, had only just begun. The next few weeks passed in a blur as Finn's professional inferno raged. His face seemed to be perpetually plastered across cable TV financial news tickers, a fallen star of the business world embroiled in scandal. I watched the unfolding devastation he wrought upon himself with a sort of clinical detachment. Part of me marveled at how utterly my covert machinations had annihilated the pristine facade of his so-called perfect life. The other part simply felt nothing. No rush of victory or schadenfreude, just an eerie hollowness where the molten fury that had sustained me used to burn. Still, I maintained my poise, immersing myself in work at the agency and the company of my newfound friends like Danny. They provided a shelter of normality from the media storm surrounding Finn. Until one chill autumn evening shattered that fragile equilibrium. A strident pounding on my apartment door jolted me from the script revisions I was poring over. My heart stuttered. I rarely had visitors anymore, beyond the occasional dinner with Kyle and Sophie. Crossing the living room, I peered through the peephole and felt my breath seize in my lungs. Finn stood in the hallway, fist raised to batter on the door again. Even through the fisheye distortion, his appearance was shockingly haggard. Suit wrinkled and disheveled, dark circles cratering his sunken eyes, the once pristine coif of his hair disarrayed as if he'd been clawing his fingers through it, obsessively. I stared at his diminished form, some primal part of my brain struggling to reconcile this haunted wraith with the confident, coldly self-possessed man he had once been. The pounding sounded again, more insistently. "Alara, I know you're in there. Open the damn door!" Against my better judgment, I disengaged the locks and drew the barrier open a few scant inches, enough to face him directly while keeping the door's solid oak between us. "What do you want, Finn?" I asked flatly. His eyes were wild, features contorted into a twisted rictus of outrage and something darker, more unsettling. Guilt? Self-loathing? "You did this!" He jabbed a finger at me, spittle flying. "You destroyed my entire life with your treachery and lies." I couldn't stifle my mocking laugh. "Your life? I'm afraid you're deluding yourself again, Finn. The life you reference was built entirely on deception. Your actions forfeited any right to claim it." A muscle twitched erratically along his jaw. "Do you have any idea what you've taken from me? My career, my reputations, my family, all of it gone because of your selfish need for vengeance." The words struck like physical blows, dredging up memories of those first cataclysmic days after Finn revealed his betrayal, the all-consuming anguish and feeling of having my entire world shattered around me. But I refused to let him see any flicker of lingering vulnerability. Straightening my shoulders, I met his crazed stare with glacial calm. "You're right, Finn. I did take everything from you," I said, each word carrying surgical precision. "But it pales in comparison to what you stole from me that night." His mouth worked soundlessly, as if groping for justification amid our shared history and finding nothing. "You had everything," I pressed on relentlessly. "My unwavering love, loyalty, trust, and you demolished it all for your depraved selfishness and lies. You chose to obliterate my life and the family we built." My voice hardened to adamantine edges. "This—" I gestured at the shattered husk of the man before me. "This is the hell of your own making. A renaissance of the devastation you inflicted upon me, multiplied 1,000-fold. Finn recoiled as if I'd slapped him. His mouth opened and closed a few times soundlessly before he finally croaked. "Marissa left me, you know. Took my daughter Jenna and just disappeared once the truth came out about my deceptions." My eyebrows arched coolly. "And you thought that would engender sympathy from me? After you revealed your second family so cavalierly in my home?" The hallway seemed to contract around us as I continued lancing him with the stark truth. "Marissa and Jenna, they were just pawns in your game, means to an end of siring your legacy since I couldn't provide children for you. They never mattered beyond their utility, did they?" For an endless, harrowing beat, Finn simply stared at me as if beholding a demonic specter. Then his gaze dropped, his next words a barely audible rasp of surrender. "I'm so sorry, Alara, for everything." With that, he turned and shambled away like a broken marionette, the once proud and mighty Finn Townsend reduced to a shattered effigy. I watched him depart, then quietly disengaged the locks and slipped back into my sanctuary. The burden of those long years of anguish and bitterness finally eased, sloughing off to scatter at my feet like molted scales. Finn was right about one thing. The past was lost to us, an entire lifetime together incinerated to ashes. But the future remained unwritten. A road of renewal and rebirth stretched out before me. And this time, I thought with a surge of grim determination, I would be the author of my own destiny. The stretch of boardwalk was deserted in the crisp morning chill, a solitary sanctuary affording an unobstructed vista of the shimmering ocean. I inhaled deeply, drawing the briny air into my lungs as the rhythmic murmur of waves lapping against the sandy shoreline washed over me. So much had changed since that fateful night. Finn revealed his sickening duplicity to me. The chasm of his betrayal had ultimately become the crucible to refine me into hardened steel, unbowed by the firestorm that consumed everything we had once built together. Closing my eyes, I conjured up my final encounter with Finn, after setting the inexorable wheels of his downfall into motion. The hollowed, haunted shadow he had become, crushed beneath the consequences of his lies and selfish machinations. There was no absolution for the devastation he wrought, no atonement to be offered or accepted. Alara Townsend ceased to exist the moment I walked away from Finn, slumped in that dimly lit hallway outside my apartment. My eyes snapped open, renewed determination coursing through me. That part of my life was over, blessedly behind me like the waning tide receding from the shore. A new dawn was blazing on the horizon, a new chapter awaiting an author. The chime of my phone broke through my reverie. A text from Danny flashed across the screen. "Wake up, lazy bones. Can't let the hotshot new creative director of Hudson Branding sleep the day away." A smile curved my lips as I typed back a pithy retort about respecting my West Coast time zone. After sending the message, I pivoted and began strolling back along the beach toward my bungalow's winding path. With one last glance over my shoulder at the vast, restless expanse of the Pacific, I climbed the wooden steps back up to my modest home tucked into the Malibu cliffside. I was in the middle of brewing a much-needed mug of coffee when a sharp rap sounded at my door. Frowning, I crossed the living room and checked the peephole, only to grin when I spotted Kyle and Sophie's familiar faces on my doorstep. "What is this, a staged intervention?" I called out as I tugged the door open and ushered them inside with a warm embrace. "Something like that," Kyle said with a laugh as he took in the cozy, sunlit sitting room. "We thought we'd come surprise you in your new West Coast digs before heading back to Portland." "You'll have to excuse the mess," I demurred. "My place isn't exactly designed for hosting." "Please," Sophie scoffed, patting my shoulder fondly. "You've come so far from that sterile mausoleum you lived in with you-know-who." She cast a meaningful glance around the eclectic decor and the stunning vista visible through the balcony patio door. "You should be incredibly proud of this new life you've created." Pride, love, determination, a kaleidoscopic array of emotions swirled through me in that moment, prompting me to blink back a surge of grateful tears. "Thanks for being there for me when everything fell apart," I murmured, pulling her into a fierce hug. "I don't know where I'd be without your support, both of you." Kyle returned the embrace, favoring me with a warm yet serious look over Sophie's shoulder. "Cut the mushy stuff, sis. You've fought like hell to gain control of your own destiny. That inner strength was there all along, buried by years of lies and heartbreak. We just helped give you the courage to unleash it." With my closest family beside me in this sanctuary, it felt like everything had finally, truly fallen into place at last. The mistakes and wreckage of the past faded into insignificance, footnotes in the opening chapters of this new life I was authoring. The betrayal and anguish I had endured were not scars to be borne in silent shame, I realized with poignant clarity. They were badges of honor, reminders that I had weathered the worst the cruel whims of fate could hurl at me, and emerged tempered into an indomitable spirit. I would always carry a piece of Alara Townsend within me, that implacable inner steel that had seeded my vengeance upon Finn and Loretta. But my future would ultimately be defined by how I channeled that strength into building something positive and enduring, a life of my own design. As Sophie and Kyle regaled me with news from their own lives, laughter and warm conversation filling the cozy seaside cottage, I felt a profound sense of tranquil resolve settle over me. The next chapters of this new story would absolutely not be squandered. It was finally time to start living again.